My name is Victor Fuhrman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. In the spring of 2020, with the spread of the pandemic, the challenges it presented, the egregious acts of racism and racial violence, and a failure of leadership to address these challenges, I shared on this program and in my community that it was time for acts of radical kindness, radical compassion, and radical love. We begin 2021 with the recognition that these acts continue to call to us and that our very survival is contingent on caring for one another, our environment, and our world. How may we find a path to this, and in doing so, open the hearts and minds of all peoples to this reality? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Rabbi Michael Lerner, has made this path much of his life's work. Rabbi Lerner is an American political activist, the editor of Tikkun, a progressive Jewish interfaith magazine based in Berkeley, California, and the rabbi of Beit Tikkun Synagogue in Berkeley. Rabbi Lerner's legacy of political activism is launched in 1964 when he attended UC Berkeley. He walked past students sitting in protest, listened to their speeches, and joined their efforts, quickly becoming a leader in the student movement. The failures of the social change movements of the 60s and 70s inspired him to study psychology to gain a deeper understanding of the psychodynamics of American society. Intellectual wisdom and curiosity, as well as spiritual depth, have always been the foundation of his work and efforts, giving rise to many articles, books, and ultimately Tikkun magazine. His best-selling books include The Left Hand of God, Spirit Matters, and Jewish Renewal. You can find out more about him at the websites tikkun.org, that's TIKKUN.org, and beitkun.org, that's BEYTTIKKUN.org. He joins me this week to share his path, his work, and his book, Revolutionary Love, a political manifesto to heal and transform the world. Please welcome to Destination Unlimited, Rabbi Michael Lerner. Welcome, Rabbi.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
And thank you for joining us and sharing this very, very important message. So let's start by sharing your wisdom and your experience. Please introduce yourself to our listeners meeting you for the first time. Tell them about your path and how it led to your many callings.
Well, my path started as in rebellion against my parents, who were secular, primarily secular in their lives, and very much involved in American politics, and I got to have a sort of a second row seat in American politics through my parents, my father was a judge and my mother was a political advisor and official of the our state, a U.S. state senator from New Jersey at the time, and I got to see how screwed up the world, this political world was, how different what they actually did in Congress from what they said they were going to do, and how unhappy they were to hear anybody pointing this out. So that led me to look for some other way of connecting with the reality I was living in. And that happened when I encountered a leading Jewish theologian of the 20th century, Abraham Joshua Heschel. I met him first when I was 12 years old. I started to read his book, God in Search of Man, and eventually I got to know him personally, and that personal connection then led me to a situation where I was, as an undergraduate at Columbia College in New York, part of Columbia University, I would meet with Heschel once a month, and he would be my mentor, and in that process, I came to understand not only what was screwed up in the American politics, but also what was screwed up in the Jewish world. Heschel was not universally loved, particularly by people of power in the Jewish world, and all the more so when he became one of the founders of the co-founders of Clergy and Laity Against the War in Vietnam. Well, I had already by that point become an activist against the war in Vietnam, and although only an activist first at the University of California, Berkeley, where I was chair of the Students for Democratic Society, but also then as an assistant professor at the University of Washington, where I helped organize a major demonstration against the war, which led in turn to me being indicted by the federal government and ultimately sent to federal penitentiary with the J. Edgar Hoover saying, Michael Lerner is one of the most dangerous criminals in America, although I had never done any act of violence or anything of the sort, but I had been able to speak to people in a way that made them understand the extreme immorality of that war and really of almost all wars. So from there, the appeals court overturned the convictions, and I eventually decided to become a psychologist to try to understand the psychodynamics of American society, and in that, and what I learned in that was very important to shaping what eventually became Tikkun magazine, the magazine that was at first primarily a Jewish magazine, but then evolved into an interfaith magazine, and even open really to secular people who did not believe in any God, but who had a strong ethical calling. And that what I learned was this, that the liberal and progressive forces, which, by the way, I still identify with and support in their economic entitlements and political rights struggles, but they were sorely absent in the ethical domain, particularly with articulating ethical and spiritual values. And many people who were originally part of the liberal and progressive world were moving to the right politically, not because they agreed with the right, but because they felt so disrespected, particularly around issues of religion and spirituality, because many Americans, 60% of Americans, answer the question, how often do you go to church, with the answers that 60% said, we go at least once a month. Now, that's not true. They were saying that, many of them, because they want to be seen that way. But in the liberal and progressive world, people are actually put down for, or at least felt they were being put down by the strong religiophobia and strong dismissal of spiritual consciousness as irrelevant, or as something that only somebody who is not adequately psychologically sophisticated or intellectually developed could possibly believe in. But number two, I was seeing that this was a crazy, and remains to this moment, a crazy way of dealing with a hunger that people have for not just what the left promised to deliver in the way of economic entitlements and political rights, but for some higher meaning and purpose to life in a country dominated by capitalism, and capitalism's central message being, look out for number one, maximize your own well-being at the expense of everybody else, get as much as you can, and if you don't do that, somebody else will do it for themselves, and you'll get screwed. You'll be pushed out. You'll be powerless. So if you want to be rational in this society, maximize your own well-being and your own wealth and your own power in the world. So many people believe that that's their only alternative, and yet they hunger for something different. And that hunger for something different led many people to reactionary politics, to politics that officially articulated a spiritual or religious commitment, but then directed that in a very destructive way. I can talk about that more whenever you want me to, but so that is the path that led me to Tikkun magazine, to creating. Actually, first I went to all the leaders of the major liberal and progressive world and tried to talk to them about this hunger for meaning and purpose. And basically, many of them said to me, "Look, that's just crazy. It's not what people really want. What people want is more money. They want more power." Now, I'm not denying that people do want more money, because in a world in which that's the only thing they can get in after a lifetime of work in jobs that have no higher meaning than to make the rich and powerful richer and more powerful, money makes some kind of compensation for a wasted life. But that's what most of these working people were telling me. And I had, this was not just an impression I had. I was the director of a National Institute for Mental Health project to understand the psychodynamics of working class and middle income people in American society, the dynamics at work and in family life. And was there interviewing and having groups for thousands of people, not just me running them, but also a staff that I had from a grant from the National Institute for Mental Health. I learned all this and learned that it was really deeply true. And yet, when you go to the leadership of the liberal and progressive world, they think you're crazy. Or worse, they think you're dangerous because you're undermining what they think is the only thing that they can deliver, which is more money or at least higher wages. Now, it remains to be seen whether that would still retain support if they could deliver on those things. But the truth of the matter is that the liberal and progressive forces, at least as manifested in the Democratic Party, is deeply compromised because a very strong section of the Democratic Party is aligned with the ruling elites of our country. They believe in that the system really works. And for them, it does. For the top 10 to 20% of income earners, it works well. But for the rest of the society, it doesn't work well at all. It does because if they, as they have, pursued policies that serve the interests of the top 10 to 20% of the population, they end up screwing over the needs of the bottom 80% of income earners and wealth holders in this society. And so what's happened over time is that the disparity, the gulf between the super rich and the rest of us has grown bigger and bigger and bigger. And so people really feel that the Democratic Party has little to deliver, and so the Republicans and right-wing forces open their churches and say, "You're welcome here. Come here." So that's some of the evolution that led me to create Tikkun magazine and to create Tikkun as a voice for those who want a different kind of world, who seek the word healing. The word Tikkun means healing, repair, and transformation. And that's what so many people yearn for, a real healing, a real transformation of this society. And yet, most people who yearn for it simultaneously tell you that they're not going to be part of any movement because it's unrealistic, and because they believe that everyone else has already absorbed so much of the capitalist ethos that all they will care about is themselves. And because of that, even the best, many wonderful people end up saying, I can't deal with the big picture. What I can do is deal with just myself. I'll try to make myself a better person. I love that. I think it's very important for people to do that. And hence I very much want people to be involved in their spiritual life and in their psychological development and so forth. But that this motto, I can't change the world, I just change myself, or we're going to change the world one person at a time, has been with us for 40 years, and the society has gotten worse. The destruction of the planet has gotten much more intense, and unfortunately, that strategy is only valuable when it's part of a larger strategy to change the structures, the economic and political structures of this society, from one based on selfishness and materialism and looking out for number one, to institutions that reward people for the degree to which they care for each other. And that's why I've launched through this book, my newest book, Revolutionary Love, an attempt at a movement that we call the love and justice movement. Justice part, yes, that's the economic entitlements and so forth. But the love part is what has been so deeply missing from liberal and progressive politics. Even the best of them, say Bernie Sanders, who occasionally has used that word, but very rarely has actually embodied it, and this movement didn't embody it. You can't just talk about love. You have to create movements that actually embody love. And this is the thing that people in the liberal and progressive world don't understand, is that if you go to the right-wing churches, they actually do love each other. They care for each other. They don't just have politics. They've got caring institutions that do take care of each other. The downside is that anybody who's not part of that institution, they blame for all the problems that people have, and so they have managed to build movements that are caring inside and that are demeaning, racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, anti-Semitic for anybody who's not part of them. I have to say about how I got here.
Those bring up two questions for me. Number one, you had talked about what J. Edgar Hoover had said about you when you were speaking the truth, and it seems that we have that same thing happening today, that people who speak the truth are being called criminals.
Yes, you're so right, and it's disgusting and awful, and but there's no controlling people who want to dominate and control others by putting them down and demeaning them and speaking lies. The only thing we have in our society that makes it possible to challenge them is to have a different kind of movement that speaks truth and that embodies love. And we don't have that yet. So so it's easy to distort what people on the liberal and progressive world are about, since they don't really recognize the hunger for meaning and purpose in life, and they don't recognize the centrality of love and caring and kindness and generosity, even though that's what motivates almost everybody who's come into the liberal and progressive world. They come in there, but then they think, I can't talk about those things. Love, kindness, generosity, caring for others, that's something for private life. But in public life, I can't do that. Now, why do they think this? Well, because our society as a whole, thanks to the triumph of the capitalist order, has put forward the notion that what really is real is that which can be verified through sense datum or measured. But it turns out that all the most important things in life, or at least many of the most important things in life, love, kindness, generosity, a sense of commitment to other people, the caring that we need, all of this cannot be measured. It cannot be verified through a sense datum. So what happens is that people are educated in this way, whether they're liberal or conservative. They're educated from the start. The whole educational system and our economic system are based on this old bottom line, that what counts is what can be verified through sense datum or measured. And of course, the easiest thing to be measured is money. So it ends up that money becomes the universal way that people think this shows the reality of the world. Well, it shows something for sure when you have huge gaps between the rich and the poor. but it doesn't speak to the highest yearnings of people. So what people end up doing is saying, look, if it's all about money, I'll try to get as much as I can for myself. And for, as I say, the top 20% of earners feel that they've done okay about that. But the rest of us are in deep trouble.
And we're going to discuss that gap in our next segment. My guest is Rabbi Michael Lerner. He's the author of the book Revolutionary Love, a political manifesto to heal and transform the world. Rabbi Lerner, please tell our listeners where they can get your books and find out more about you and your work.
Well, the book is published by the University of California Press. And given that most bookstores are shut these days, you've got to go to online bookstores like Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or you can come to our website, tikkun, tikkun.org, tikkun.org/LJ. LJ stands for Love and Justice. There you'll find out why people like Cornel West and Gloria Steinem and Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, and many, many other people have raved about this book. And I hope that some of you will take the time to go there to tikkun.org, tikkun.org/LJ, and read about this book, and you'll see why it's excited many, many other people. And I think you'll then find there a link to where you can actually order the book through us.
And we'll be back with more of Rabbi Michael Lerner after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM-FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
A social distancing tip.
Keeping your distance from others is important in slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are some fun things to do alone. Read a book, take a walk, unpack your suitcase from that trip you took last September, paint a self-portrait, catch up on a TV series, do a puzzle. Remember, we should all stay home to lower the risk for everyone. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living, a chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me, and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Rabbi Michael Lerner. He's the author of the book Revolutionary Love, a political manifesto to heal and transform the world. Rabbi, I'm about 10 years younger than you, and my activism came in the late 60s and early 70s. Your generation, as well as mine, were working and moving toward the goals and ideals that would truly transform our world. You had mentioned many, many things about the liberal movements and progressives in the earlier segment. How did we lose our way?
Well, we lost our way in part because we were not able to embody the loving and caring that we believed was necessary for the world to change. Many of us, as individuals, said, "Yeah, that's what we need." But then, when we got together in groups, our organizations, our demonstrations, our public political discourse did not ever talk about love, kindness, generosity, caring, and in our meetings, we were great at arguing with each other, but we very rarely showed real caring for each other. And so the we told each other that's not the place for this. We can have after the meetings we can have dances, or we can have time to get stoned or whatever. But there was no place for a manifestation of spiritual consciousness or of love, of caring, kindness, and generosity. We thought those were private concerns, not public concerns. But it turns out that this is a central need that people have. And so more and more people began to look for other ways, for other places in which those kinds of needs, the spiritual needs, the psychological needs, the need for respect and care, could be met. And at the same time, simultaneously, the state under Nixon was indicting people, shooting people. I mean, don't underestimate the importance of repression. The repression was real, but it wouldn't have worked if we, in our own organizations, had felt more of that love and caring and kindness and generosity. We didn't, and I tried several times to revive the New Left energies. I even created an organization called the New American Movement. At its founding conference in Iowa, we had so many people there who came to make sure that we didn't do anything. That instead we became a group of old New Lefters talking to each other rather than reaching out to the American society. And that was another part. There was a deep elitism in many of us who were part of those progressive movements. We thought that we cared about higher values, but we acted as though anybody who wasn't yet part of us was almost certainly below us, not really to be respected. And in particular, there was a great deal of antagonism towards American working class people. Well, you can't build a transformative movement unless you can open your heart to America's working class. Most of us are part of it. Most of us are part of the working class. But we didn't. We conjured up images of workers as all sexist and racist and so forth. And what happened shortly thereafter, by the mid-'70s, was that liberals and progressives were portraying people who are not yet with us as racist or sexist or homophobic or xenophobic, and insisting that everybody had white skin privilege, or men had an intrinsic attraction to sexism. Well, look, if you want to build a movement that actually changes the society, you can't dismiss all white people as racist, and you can't dismiss all men as sexist, and then expect that people will respond to you. And in fact, that has been part of the problem of liberal and progressive movements ever since. There's so little respect for people who are not yet with us, but who could be with us. Instead, there's this not just dismissing of people who aren't with us, but even towards each other. We turned to each other in the middle of the 70s and from then on with this sense of, okay, you've got to prove to me that you're not a racist, you're not a sexist, you're not a homophobe, you're not an anti-Semite, whatever. And that kind of way of treating other people in our own movement made people say, I want out of here. I don't want to be part of a movement where I'm under suspicion because of the conditions of my birth, because I was born a man, or I born white, or born a Jew, or born. I mean, it was crazy, and that all of that contributed to undermining what was beautiful in our public message. It was undermined by that kind of put down of each other.
Our respective generations worked toward equality for African Americans and other people of color, for women, and for others who were marginalized. And again, major strides, yet the undercurrent of racism never went away, and 2020 saw its ugliness really profound once again. How may we open our hearts to the oneness of all?
Well, the way to open our hearts to the oneness of all is, number one, to do just that, to open our hearts, individually and collectively. We need institutions like churches, synagogues, mosques, and other places where those institutions raise this issue and teach about this issue and teach how it happened. Teach what it was in American society. But it's not just America. Racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, global problems. And so we need to teach each other this. That should be taught in public schools at every grade level, from kindergarten up through graduate school. There should be required courses on that, so that people learn deeply how all this craziness and hurtfulness has originated and has been sustained by the various economic and political arrangements of our society. But that's not enough. We also need to simultaneously try to change those institutions. There's no way that you're going to overcome racism in this society as long as you don't also make reparations for slavery, pay back to African Americans what was done to them, reparations for Native Americans and for the genocide that was done to them, and simultaneously build into all of our institutions the necessity of giving the struggle against racism and sexism and homophobia, etc., a part in in every institution, so that is talked about, that is discussed. But it has to be done in a loving way. It can't be done by saying we need to do this because you, white man, you, man, you're all evil because of your sex or because of your color of your skin. This is just a reversal of the sexism and racism that we have in the society, and it doesn't work. It actually leads people away from any kind of progressive movement. So the progressive movements today almost certainly would have won many more, much more of support from in the Senate and in the House in this past election if they had been repudiating that approach that has been articulated by some people in the left with a lot of publicity, that everybody is racist, or every white person is racist, and every man is a suspect of sexism. We have to approach people in a way that supports what's good in them and not focus on what we suspect might be bad in them. That's a step in that direction.
Absolutely. Both your magazine and synagogue have the Hebrew word tikkun in their respective names, and in the first segment you had mentioned that the word tikkun means to repair, the expression tikkun olam, to heal or to repair the world. How does that apply to the work of spiritual activism and social responsibility?
Well, in the prayer, there's a prayer that is said 3 times a day in the Jewish world. It's called the Aleinu. It's upon us to give praise to God. It goes on with the praise and recognizing that there is one God and there is nothing else. It says, okay, that's all there is God. Okay, we are all part of God. We're all part of the God of the universe. This is not a picture of a big man in heaven. It's a picture of a God energy that is part of all being. But then in the next paragraph, the last paragraph of that prayer, Aleinu, it says, "L'takein olam b'malchut Shaddai," to transform the world. And then it says Malchut Shaddai. Well, that was, when I was growing up in the conservative movement of Judaism, that was translated as the power of God. But actually, Shaddai is a shortened form of Shaddayim, which means breath. Okay, to transform the world. So the way I translate it, and many others today are doing, is to transform the world under the kingship or the rule of the breast energy. Now, what is the breast energy? The breast energy is the first thing we come across as newborns. It is the energy that is loving and supportive and nourishing, and we need that to be the center of our spiritual life. How we make our world nourishing and supportive and love-filled. So many people identify breasts in that way. That's the breasted energy that is the center of Tikkun Olam. The Takein Olam, to make the Tikkun Olam b'malchut Shaddai, in the governance of the breasted energy, of the love energy, of the nurturing energy of the society. So this is it's when we look at the world this way, through that framework, that the God energy of the universe is also the nurturing energy, the loving energy, that we are called continually to be in that state of consciousness. That's when we are able to make our religious and spiritual life connect with our healing and transformation of the institutions of the society. There has to be an end to the division. Now, that doesn't mean an end to the correct insight that liberals had, that nobody should be forced into using state power into some particular religious or spiritual life. But then they took that in extreme. Religious life is certainly extremely important to life, and so it should be taught in public schools, not one particular religion, but the array of religions of humanity should be taught about, and people should come to understand what people seek in spiritual life. Now that, again, it's a slippery slope, possibly, if you have that done in a crude way. But if you have that done in a conscious way, in a way in which those who are hired to do that kind of teaching were invited from various religious and spiritual traditions to share what they have to say, can only be good. And yes, there may have to be some strong guidelines there, so that if a teacher starts to advocate that everybody should do it his or her way, that person should not be invited back to teach in a school. But there are a lot of people who can teach their own religious life without insisting that it's the only way to a religious or spiritual life.
And as those of us who have been in the interfaith movement for any length of time recognize in our studies, that at the foundation of every major religion is the same message: love one another, take care of one another. Yes,
exactly right. Very, very important.
Is there a way that we can teach people or have them reestablish the sense of emotional intelligence? That seems to be missing.
Well, it should be taught in school again. It should be emphasized that this is a requirement for getting into any kind of college, is that you do well on emotional intelligence, but not just intelligence, but also in actual acts of caring and involvement in some form of tikkun olam, in some form of healing and repair of the world. There doesn't have to be one form, but this should be a central requirement for getting into colleges. Is that you've spent some of your energy or time doing that, developing your capacity emotionally, and that if that were the case, then most schools would start to teach it.
And in the concept of emotional intelligence, what we're also talking about is that when you disagree with someone, you can use your heart and your love to understand where they're coming from and why the disagreement exists.
Yes, exactly. In fact, in the organization we created called the Network of Spiritual Progressives, we teach a thing we call prophetic empathy. Empathy is critical. Knowing and trying to find out what moves other people and speaking to their hungers. Very, very important in life. But we say prophetic empathy because we also want to introduce in that the vision of our prophets to build a different kind of world, to build a world in which the swords have been beaten into plowshares, so that there's no more violence, and not just in the physical manifestation, but also in our discourse with each other, learning how to transform negative speech into positive speech, affirmation of each other, and also looking at through that prophetic empathy towards what institutions need to be changed. And in my view, the central institution that needs to be changed is capitalism. We need to have an economic system that rewards people with a new bottom line. The old bottom line says we judge every institution, our corporations, our economy, our government policies, our judicial system, our legal, our education system, our cultural systems as efficient, rational, and productive to the extent that they maximize money and power. And we need a new bottom line that says, no, let's judge all those institutions efficient, rational, and productive to the extent that they maximize people's capacities to be loving and caring, kind and generous, ethically and environmentally sensitive, capable of pursuing social and economic justice, and treating other human beings, every other human being, as an embodiment of the sacred, rather than looking at other people primarily through the framework of what we can get from them, what they will do for us, how they will take care of our needs, rather seeing them as fundamentally deserving of love and caring, and looking at the planet Earth and the larger universe, not solely through the framework that we use today of, gee, I wonder if there's something here I can turn into a commodity and sell. That's the capitalist mentality, the old bottom line. The new bottom line says, no, looking at with awe and wonder and radical amazement at the grandeur and mystery of this universe.
Absolutely.
Let that be the new bottom line that is taught in schools and is rewarded in the work world and everywhere else, and you will have a transformed society very quickly.
His name is Rabbi Michael Lerner. We'll be back with more of him after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Rabbi Michael Lerner. We're talking about his new book, Revolutionary Love, a political manifesto to heal and transform the world. Rabbi, what is revolutionary love, and how may we embrace and spread it?
Well, revolutionary love means love that is not just for of the romantic type. I'm all for romantic love, and I'm in love myself with my wife. But we need a different form as well. I mean, a form of love that is commanded in the Torah. It's actually the most frequently repeated command of the Torah is this: thou shalt love the stranger, the other. Remember that you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Variants of that, the command to love the stranger or the other, to take care of the stranger or the other. That's what I mean by revolutionary love. It means a love that is not bound by your face-to-face interaction with somebody. It also extends to everybody on the planet. Now, we've seen this manifested in our own lives, except we haven't called it that. But when thousands of people hearing upon about the burning of the towers in Manhattan went down there and trying to see how they could help, and hundreds of people actually lost their lives as not as people inside the towers, but by going into those towers to see if they could save other people. Well, that's revolutionary love. It is willingness to put your life on the line to help other people who are in danger or in need of help. And it doesn't have to be in the extremes of a building burning or risking your own safety. But it has to be a sense of commitment to the well-being of everyone else on the planet. That is revolutionary love. It means that I can't be okay when Israel is oppressing Palestinians. I'm all for the Jewish state of Israel. I think Israel is great. I'm wonderful. But it's also atrocious in what it's doing to Palestinians. I have to care about them. They're not my people, but they are part of my world, and I care about everyone. I care about the Muslims who are being put into concentration camps, but in China, and the terrible treatment that they're getting there. Care about wherever people are suffering. That revolutionary love is about giving equal value to all human beings on the planet.
Absolutely.
We can't, every one of us, spend all of our life doing that for everyone. We have to pick where we can put our energy in the most effective way. But we certainly should be able to vote for candidates who use our government and our funds and to help as much as we can the people of the world, and not just the people who are making America great again.
I remember having a debate with a friend of mine when I was in the Interfaith Seminary in the 1990s. And I said to this person, what was the greatest sin in Sodom and Gomorrah? Why were Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed? And they said, well, sexual perversity. I said, no. The greatest sin in Sodom and Gomorrah was turning away the stranger in need, refusing entrance and support of someone who needed a place to stay, food in their mouth. Was the greatest sin. And that's really what it's about. And we're doing it today.
We're doing it today. And unfortunately, we were doing it under the Obama regime as well as under the Trump regime. And I have great fear about going back to an Obama-like presidency, that it may end up doing a little more than creating the circumstances that led to the triumph of a Trump in 2016. I'm fearful that 2024 may bring us yet another Trump, or 2028 bring us either the original Trump or another Trump who can build on the disappointment that is generated by in people who had high hopes for a transformation, but then had as the vehicle of that transformation Joe Biden, who has all his life been identified with the most conservative part of the Democratic Party.
In Revolutionary Love, you discuss the Great Deprivation. What is it, and how may we work to reverse it?
Well, the Great Deprivation is a deprivation of meaning and love. It's the sense of that people actually want and need a world based on love, and they want and need a world in which they can see that they are contributing to something more important than simply putting money into their own pockets or taking care of a few friends. This deprivation is intrinsic to the capitalist order, which, as I say, sets people against each other, teaches people to look out for number one, and teaches them that wherever they end up is a function of their own, how hard they worked, or how smart they are. So the Great Deprivation is a deprivation of respect, a deprivation of caring, a deprivation of mutual recognition of who each of us is as an embodiment of the holy. That deprivation is pervasive in this society, which teaches us to look out for just for number one, and to not see in each other the God energy, the holy energy, the spiritual energy, and since we are surrounded by people who believe that this is all baloney, and they believe it because they've been told that their own hunger for that, maybe they learned this by the time they were 4 or 5 in preschool, and that message kept on repeating all through school, through high school, through college, etc. Hey, forget about all that stuff about yearning for some higher meaning and purpose to life. That's just woo-woo stuff that has no value. Just get yourself a good job with a lot of as much money as possible, and don't worry about whether it has any higher meaning or purpose. Well, that's the Great Deprivation that we all face, and it takes a lot of energy to overcome that deprivation. If you're just doing it alone. That's why we need community. We need a sense of being with others. And that's why we created this network of spiritual progressives, which incidentally you can find online at spiritualprogressives.org. And by the way, also, if you want to see about my book, Revolutionary Love, get that my name Lerner is spelled Lerner, not Learner, but Lerner. So these are ways of overcoming the deprivation by being part of a community that affirms higher meaning and purpose to life.
If we could have one transformational miracle tomorrow, just one, what would it be?
You mean if I were God or if I were me?
If we could ask God to give us one miracle tomorrow, what would it be?
It would be to let love permeate the consciousness of every human being on this planet, so that nothing but love manifested in their behavior and in their political life and in their cultural life. That love became the major reality in every person's consciousness.
Absolutely. What would you like readers to take away from Revolutionary Love?
I'd like them to take away, well, let's say, number one, don't be realistic. Okay, don't be realistic, because realistic means accepting the message from the powerful, the people who run the televisions and all forms of media, the people who run the governments, both parties, all those who are telling you that a kind of world based on love, kindness, and generosity, a new bottom line of awe and wonder at the universe and seeing other human beings as embodiments of the sacred, all that is sweet, but unrealistic. So you can't base your life on that. Base your life on how it is now, and then compromise with what you want in terms of what people have told you, including the people who are good guys like Bernie Sanders or others who tell you, well, we can't really go there because that's unrealistic. Instead, I want you to take away from this interview one message: don't be realistic. Spend your energy, your remaining energy on this planet, whether you're a teenager or whether you're in your 70s or 80s, wherever you are, spend your energy fighting for economically supporting those who, for the world you really want, the world that you really can believe in. I think you'll find a description of what that world could look like in my book, Revolutionary Love, but you don't have to accept my version. If my version doesn't speak to you, create your own, but then don't settle for a world that is so far from the world that you really want to live in. Instead, don't be realistic and go for the highest good that you actually desire.
Absolutely. His name is Rabbi Michael Lerner. Please tell us where we can find out about your book and your work and all of these wonderful things that you do. Well,
first of all, you can go to tikkun.org, tikkun.org, to read something there, or all the better if you go to tikkun.org/LJ, standing for Love and Justice, and read about my book and get my book, Revolutionary Love. That's an important step. Join our training for Prophetic Empathy. on the website spiritualprogressives.org, or join the organization of Spiritual Progressives and be part of it. That's at spiritualprogressives.org, and the training is spiritualprogressives.org/training. And there you'll find information on when the next such training begins. We just finished one, and another one will probably start by the beginning of February. And read the book, read Revolutionary Love. I promise that you will have an understanding, a deeper understanding, even though I'm sure that the people who are already listening to this are people who already have much of your spiritual consciousness at a high level. This one will show you how to take that spiritual consciousness and use it as a vehicle for transformation of the world.
Rabbi Lerner, thank you so much for joining us and sharing this very, very important message.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, and I should have also mentioned rabbilerner.tikkun, Tikkun, @gmail.com, if you want to speak to me directly.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on this show.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Fuhrman. Have a wonderful week.